The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched across 3 kilometers of polished crystal and living light. Delegations from 47 species filled the curved seats that rose like waves toward a ceiling that showed the stars themselves. This was the heart of galactic civilization, where decisions shaped the fate of trillions. Ambassador Ilara Chen walked toward the central platform with steady steps. Her black diplomatic uniform carried no medals, no ribbons, no decorations of any kind. Behind her walked 6 other human diplomats, their faces calm and professional. They had waited 3 years for this moment. Humanity had waited 3 centuries. The whispers started before she reached the platform. Ilara heard fragments in a dozen languages, translated by the small device in her ear. Some voices carried curiosity, others carried contempt. She ignored them all. High Counselor Zethra, of the Luminari, rose from his elevated seat. His body was made of pure light, given physical form, and he glowed with colors that humans could barely perceive. The Luminari had led the Council for 11,000 years. They considered themselves the wisest species in the galaxy. The Council recognizes the human delegation, Zethra announced. His voice carried across the vast chamber without any technology. You may present your petition. Ilara stepped onto the speaker's circle. The floor beneath her feet became transparent, showing the swirling nebula below the station. It was designed to humble speakers, to remind them of their smallness against the cosmos. Ilara did not look down. High Counselor, honored delegates, she began. Humanity formally requests, for the 47th time, a permanent seat on the Galactic Council. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Everyone knew this moment would come. Humanity had been petitioning for 200 years, Ilara continued. In the past 3 centuries, human forces have answered 237 distress calls from Council species. Human soldiers have died defending worlds they had never seen before. Human doctors have walked into plague zones that other species refused to enter. Human engineers have built infrastructure across 400 systems. She paused and looked around the chamber. We have bled for this council. We have given our children to protect species who call us savages behind closed doors. We ask only for a voice equal to those we have served. The chamber fell silent. Ilara waited. Zetere conferred with the other senior counselors. The Krethford delegate, a massive creature of stone and metal, shook his head. The Tesseron representative, delicate and bird-like, looked away. The Velkari observer, a nightmare of chitin and teeth, simply stared with its countless eyes. Finally, Zethra turned back to face Ilara. His glow shifted to soft blue, which human cultural experts had learned meant condescension. The Council has considered humanity's petition with great care, he said. We acknowledge the valuable services your species has provided. However, Council membership requires more than military capability or technical skill. It requires wisdom, patience, the ability to see beyond immediate concerns to the greater flow of galactic history. Ilara felt her heart grow cold, but her face showed nothing. Humanity is young, Zethra continued. Your species has existed for barely a moment in cosmic terms. You are emotional, impulsive. Your history is filled with violence against your own kind. These traits make you excellent soldiers and workers, but they do not qualify you for positions of true authority. He spread his arms in a gesture meant to seem generous. The Council believes that in another 1,000 years, perhaps 2, humanity may develop the maturity necessary for membership. Until then, your petition is denied. The Luminary delegates applauded with gentle waves of light. The Krethfur stamped their feet in approval. Throughout the chamber, species who had called humans to save them again and again showed their agreement with the verdict. Ilara stood in silence for a long moment. Her fellow diplomats watched her with careful eyes. They had prepared for this outcome. They had hoped they were wrong. She lifted her hand and touched a small device on her wrist. A single coded phrase transmitted to Earth Command, traveling faster than light through quantum channels. The message was simple. Golden Eagle has fallen. Then Ilara looked up at Zethra. Her voice was calm and clear. High Counselor, Humanity thanks the Council for its honest assessment of our character. You believe we are too young, too volatile, too dangerous. She paused. Perhaps you are right. Zethra's glow flickered with surprise. He had expected argument, perhaps anger, not agreement. Therefore, Alara continued, humanity will no longer trouble the Council with our presence. We will handle our own affairs. You will handle yours. She gave a small bow, perfectly formal. Goodbye. She turned and walked toward the exit. Her delegation followed without a word. For a moment, the chamber remained frozen in confusion. Then voices erupted everywhere. Delegates shouted questions. Assistants rushed between seats. The Luminary counselors conferred in rapid pulses of light. Zethra raised his hand for silence. Ambassador Chen, he called out. What exactly do you mean by this? Alara stopped at the chamber's great doors. She looked back over her shoulder. I mean exactly what I said, High Counselor. Humanity is withdrawing from the Galactic Council and all associated agreements. Our fleets will return to human space. Our diplomats will leave your worlds. Our aid workers, engineers, doctors, and scientists will come home. She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You have told us for 300 years that you do not need us as equals. Let us see if you need us at all. The doors opened. Alara walked through them. They closed behind her. In that moment, across the galaxy, every human ship received the same orders. Patrol fleets protecting alien borders began plotting courses home. Medical teams on plague worlds started packing their equipment. Engineers maintaining critical systems logged their final reports and walked away. Trade convoys changed direction mid-dash flight within 72 hours. Humanity had vanished from galactic society like a ghost at dawn. The Council held emergency sessions. Delegates demanded explanations. Zethra assured everyone that this was simply human dramatics. They would return within a month, begging for forgiveness. The Luminary had seen young species throw tantrums before, but days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. The humans did not come back, and slowly, terribly. The galaxy began to understand what it had lost. The Council had called humanity too dangerous for leadership. They were about to learn just how right they were, in ways they never imagined. 3 months after the humans walked out of the Council chamber, High Cultivator Marin stood in fields that were turning to dust. She was old by Tesseron standards. Her feathers gray and her wings too weak for flight. She had spent her entire life caring for the sacred growing lands of her world. Her mother had done the same. Her grandmother before that. For 10,000 years, Tessara Prime had fed a dozen systems with its endless harvests. Now the crops were dying. And Marin did not understand why. The soil composition has changed, her youngest assistant reported, his voice shaking. The nutrient balance is wrong. Something in the water table has shifted. Marin stared at the brown, withered plants that stretched to the horizon. How is this possible? Nothing has changed in our methods. The assistant hesitated. Hi, Cultivator. I found something in the old records. 20 years ago, a human scientist named Dr. Sarah Okonjo came to study our agricultural systems. She stayed for 3 months. I remember her, Marin said. She asked many questions about our soil. She did more than ask questions. The assistant showed her a data tablet. According to these files, Dr. Okonjo discovered that our world was experiencing a slow chemical shift in the soil, a natural process that happens over centuries. Left alone, it would have destroyed our ability to grow food within 50 years. Marin's blood turned cold. What did she do? She designed a correction system. Tiny adjustments to water treatment, mineral additions to fertilizers, changes in planting rotations. She implemented everything quietly, through small suggestions to local farmers. She trained a team of human agricultural specialists who have been maintaining the balance ever since. The assistant's voice dropped to a whisper. They left with everyone else 3 months ago. Marin looked at her dying fields. 10,000 years of harvests protected by a human scientist who never asked for credit or payment. A human who saw a problem and simply fixed it because she could. And now, because her people were too proud to ask for help, the Tesserans would starve. across the galaxy. Similar discoveries were happening everywhere, on the mining stations of the Krethfer Consortium. Chief Engineer Vrax watched his refineries fail one after another. Human technicians had been quietly improving the ancient machines for decades, replacing worn parts, updating outdated software, finding solutions to problems the Krethvar did not even know existed. Without them, systems that had run perfectly for centuries began breaking. Down within weeks, the Krethvar were proud of their technology. They had built starships when humans still lived in caves. But they had grown comfortable, relying on machines their ancestors created. They had forgotten how to fix things. Now fuel production across 12 systems had dropped by 60%. Ships sat idle in ports. Factories went dark. The great Krethver economy, built on a foundation of human maintenance that no one had acknowledged, began to crumble. But the worst news came from the Outer Rim. Admiral Kethros, of the Velkari containment fleet, read the scout reports with growing horror. He was Luminar, like Counselor Zethra, but he had spent his career far from the comfortable halls of power. He knew what lived beyond the borders. The Velkari swarm was moving. For 300 years, human patrol fleets had guarded the boundary between civilized space and the Velkari hunting grounds. The swarm was not truly evil. They were simply hungry, always hungry, a species that needed to consume other life to survive. They had learned to fear human ships, human weapons, human tactics that somehow predicted their every move. Now the human ships were gone. Automated drones patrolled the border, programmed with standard responses that the Velkari learned to avoid within days. Local defense fleets, tiny and poorly trained, could not cover the vast empty spaces. Scout forms slipped through the gaps. They tasted the fear of unprotected worlds. They reported back to the hive mind. The prey species were alone. The hunters who had kept the swarm at bay for generations had abandoned them. The time to feed had come. The first attack came on Korath Station, a trading post at the edge of civilized space. 3,000 beings of a dozen species lived there. The Velkari came in the night cycle, a wave of chitinous bodies and razor limbs. There were no human marines to hold the corridors. No human tacticians to coordinate the defense. The station fell in 4 hours. There were no survivors. On the Luminar homeworld, Counselor Zethra finally began to understand the size of his mistake. Report after report crossed his desk. The Tesserans were rationing food. The Krethver economy was collapsing. The Velkari had taken 3 systems and showed no signs of stopping. Pirates operated openly in shipping lanes. Plagues spread unchecked through populations. "We must contact the humans," his aide suggested. "Ask them to return." "They will not listen," Zethra replied. "We insulted them too deeply. Then we must make them listen. Offer them whatever they want." Zethra's light dimmed to gray. "You do not understand. We told them for 3 centuries that they were beneath us. We used their soldiers, their doctors, their engineers, and we gave them nothing but contempt in return. Now they have shown us what our civilization looks like without them." He looked out at the stars. Why would they ever come back? On Earth, Admiral Marcus Stone watched the same reports with a different expression. He was old now. His hair white and his face lined with scars from battles most humans had forgotten. He had fought the Velkari at the Battle of Crimson Reach. He had led the relief fleet to Tessera Prime during the Great Drought. He had given 50 years of his life to protecting a galaxy that called his species savages. Now he sat in the command center of Earth Fleet Headquarters, surrounded by officers who had served just as long and sacrificed just as much. They watched the galaxy burn, and they waited. "Sir," his aide said quietly, "the civilian casualties are mounting. Millions have already died." "I know," Stone replied. "Shouldn't we do something?" Stone turned to face her. His eyes were tired but steady. "Do you know why they called us dangerous, Lieutenant? It wasn't because of our weapons or our soldiers. It was because we care too much. We see suffering, and we cannot ignore it. We see problems, and we must fix them." He looked back at the screens. "For 300 years, we let that instinct control us. We gave everything to species who despised us. Now we must learn a harder lesson. What lesson, sir? That sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing at all. Stone's voice hardened. We wait. We let them see what the galaxy becomes without us. And when they are ready to treat us as equals, not as servants, we will decide if they deserve a second chance. The aide looked at the reports of burning worlds and dying populations, and if they never learn, Admiral Stone did not answer. He did not need to. The silence stretched across the galaxy. And in that silence, the screaming continued. 6 months after the human withdrawal, the galaxy had learned a terrible truth. Civilization was not a gift from the ancient races. It was not a natural state of being. It was a fragile thing, held together by work and sacrifice, and humanity had been doing most of both without anyone noticing. Now everyone noticed the Valkyrie. Swarm had consumed 17 systems. Not conquered, consumed. They left nothing behind but empty worlds stripped of all organic matter. Billions of beings had died, their bodies feeding the endless hunger of the hive mind. The swarm grew larger with every victory, spawning new warriors in numbers that staggered the imagination, the Drath Imperium, ancient enemies of the Council who had been held in check by human deterrence, launched invasions against 3 neighboring species. Their warships were old but powerful, and without human fleets to oppose them. They carved through local defenses like fire through paper. Pirates controlled entire shipping routes. Slavers operated openly, taking captives from unprotected worlds and selling them in markets that human marines had shut down centuries ago. Diseases spread across populations that human medicine could have cured in days, but now ravaged for months. The Council Chamber, once a place of dignified debate, had become a theater of desperation. We must attack the Valkyrie homeworld, the Krethfer delegate shouted, his stone body cracking with stress. Destroy them before they destroy us. With what forces? The Tezeron representative asked weakly. Her feathers had turned white with worry. Our fleets are meant for ceremony, not combat. Then we build new fleets. Building warships takes years. We have weeks. High Counselor Zethra watched the arguments with dimming light. In 6 months, he had aged more than in the previous 1,000 years. Sleep came rarely now. When it did, he dreamed of the human ambassador walking away, her back straight and her step unhurried. We must contact the humans, he finally said. The chamber fell silent. High Counselor, the Drath Observer said with barely hidden pleasure. Surely the great luminari would not lower themselves to beg the primitives for help. Zethra turned to face him. The primitives, as you call them, are the only reason your Imperium exists. Human diplomats talked us out of destroying you in the 7th War. Human trade routes brought prosperity to your border worlds. Human doctors saved your Emperor's life during the Blood Plague. His light flared with rare anger. Call them primitives again, and I will personally ensure that no Council fleet ever assists the Drath for any reason.
Oh.
The Drath fell silent. We send envoys, Zethra announced. Not ambassadors, supplicants. We offer them everything they asked for and more. We give them whatever they want. He paused. And we pray to whatever gods still listen that they are more merciful than we deserve. The envoys traveled to Earth on the fastest ship the Council possessed. They were not diplomats trained in careful words and subtle manipulation. They were simply the most sincere beings the Council could find. Sent to speak truth and hope it was enough, Secretary of External Affairs, Alara Chen, received them in a small room with white walls and simple furniture. No windows, no decorations. Nothing to suggest power or importance. The envoys had expected grand halls and displays of strength. The emptiness frightened them more. You may speak, Alara said. She looked the same as she had 6 months ago, calm and controlled. But there were shadows under her eyes now. The lead envoy, a young Tesseron named Kira, stepped forward. She had been chosen because she was honest to the point of pain, unable to speak anything but what she truly felt. Secretary Chen Kira began. I will not insult you with prepared speeches. The galaxy is dying. The Valkyrie will reach the core systems within months. When they do, there will be nothing left. Her voice cracked. I watched my sister die on a refugee ship last week. The swarm caught them 3 hours from safety. I heard her screaming through the communication channel until the signal went dead. Alara's expression did not change, but something flickered in her eyes. We treated your people terribly, Kira continued. My grandmother taught me that humans were dangerous animals, useful for fighting but nothing more. I believed her. I believed all of it. Tears fell down her feathered face. I was wrong. The humans who came to my world were kind. They helped our farmers. They taught our children. They asked for nothing except friendship, and we gave them contempt instead. She fell to her knees. The other envoys followed. I am not here to offer you seats on the council or trade rights or territory. Those things mean nothing if we all die. I am here to tell you that I am sorry, that we were wrong, that we need you. Kira looked up at Alara.
Please!
Help us. The room remained silent for a long moment. Get up, Alara finally said. Her voice was softer than before. Please, stand up. The envoys rose. Kira wiped her eyes with shaking hands. I watched the reports, Alara said. I know what is happening out there. I know about the refugee ships. I know about the fallen worlds. She closed her eyes briefly. I know that children are dying because we chose to leave. Then you will help? That is not my decision alone. Lara stood and walked to the window. Humanity is not one voice. We are billions of voices, arguing and debating and struggling to agree. Some of us want to help. Some want revenge. Some simply want to be left alone forever. What do you want? Kira asked. Ilara turned back to face her. I want to stop dreaming about the people I could save if we went back. I want to stop counting the dead and wondering how many would be alive if we had acted differently. Her voice hardened. But I also want my people to never again be treated as servants. I want our children to grow up in a galaxy that respects them. I want what we were denied for 300 years. Quality, Kira said. It's more than that. Partnership. Real partnership, where humanity's voice matters as much as any other. Where our sacrifices are acknowledged, not expected.
Alara?
Sat back down. Go home. Tell the council that humanity will consider returning. But we will set the terms. And if those terms are not acceptable, then the galaxy will have to save itself. The envoys left with a tiny spark of hope behind them. Alara Chen sat alone in the empty room. She thought about her grandmother, who had served on the first human peacekeeping mission and never came home. She thought about her father, who had died defending a luminary colony from raiders. She thought about all the graves scattered across alien worlds, filled with humans who gave everything for species that barely remembered their names. Then she thought about the children on those refugee ships, the families huddled in the dark, waiting for death. The innocent who had never voted against humanity, never spoken contempt, never done anything except be born into a galaxy their leaders had ruined. The anger in her heart fought against the mercy. Both were strong. Both were human. She did not know which would win. The debate lasted 3 weeks, across human space. Voices argued in every forum available. News programs ran endless discussions. Politicians gave passionate speeches. Ordinary citizens filled the networks with opinions that ranged from total isolation to unconditional forgiveness. Admiral Marcus Stone watched it all. From his office on Luna Base, he had given his recommendation to the government weeks ago: return. But only with ironclad guarantees. Some called him too soft. Others called him too hard. He was used to being called things. His daughter, Captain Yara Stone, visited him on the last day before the decision. The vote is tomorrow, she said, sitting across from him. She had his eyes sharp and steady, but her mother's warmth. Everyone says it will be close. It will be unanimous, Marcus replied. Yara raised an eyebrow. How can you know that? Because I know our people. He leaned back in his chair. We argued for 3 weeks because we needed to. We needed to feel the anger, express the hurt, debate every possibility. But in the end, we will do what we always do. He smiled slightly. We will help. We cannot help it. It is who we are. The vote came the next morning. 94% in favor of returning to galactic affairs. But the conditions attached to that return were absolute. Secretary Chen traveled to the council chamber 1 week later. This time, she did not come alone. Admiral Stone accompanied her, along with a dozen of humanity's highest-ranking military and political leaders. Human warships filled the space around the station. More firepower in one place than the council had seen in centuries. The chamber was full. Every species, every delegate, every observer had gathered to hear humanity's answer. Fear and hope mixed in the air like electricity. Chen stepped onto the speaker's platform. She carried a simple data tablet. "Honored delegates," she began. "Humanity has heard your request. We have debated, argued, and ultimately decided. We will return to galactic affairs." Relief swept through the chamber. Delegates embraced. Some wept. Zethra's light blazed with joy. However, Chen continued, and the chamber fell silent again. "We will not return to the way things were. Those days are over. What I hold in my hand is the document we call the Terran Accords. It is not a negotiation. It is not a request. It is an ultimatum." She began reading. "First, humanity will receive 3 permanent seats on the Galactic Council, with full veto power over any decision affecting human interests. We will not be junior partners. We will be equals." Murmurs spread through the chamber, but no one objected. "Second, all council species will contribute equally to peacekeeping forces based on their population and resources. Human soldiers will no longer die alone for species that refuse to fight for themselves. Every civilization will share the burden of defense." The Krethfer delegate shifted uncomfortably. His species had not maintained a real military in thousands of years. That would have to change. "Third, a new institution called the Galactic Humanitarian Corps will be established with human leadership. Every species must contribute resources proportional to their wealth. Aid will be distributed based on need, not politics." The Tesseron representative nodded with visible relief. Her people would be among the first to receive help. "Fourth, any species that votes to deny another species representation will forfeit their own seat for 1 century. Never again will a civilization be told it is too young or too primitive to have a voice." The Luminari had cast exactly such votes for millennia. "Fifth and final, these terms are not negotiable. Accept them in their entirety, or humanity returns to isolation. You have 1 hour to decide." Chen stepped back from the platform. The chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates argued. Ambassadors sent frantic messages to their homeworlds. The Drath declared the terms unacceptable and demanded changes. The Luminari debated among themselves in rapid pulses of light. Admiral Stone watched it all with patience. After 40 minutes, he stood and approached the platform. "May I speak?" he asked. Chen nodded. Stone faced the chamber. He was not a diplomat. He did not know the right words or the proper gestures. He knew only truth, and he spoke it now. "Counselor Zethra," he said, "right now, the Valkyrie forward scouts are 4 systems from your homeworld. Your defense fleet consists of 17 ceremonial vessels that have not fired weapons in 800 years. At their current rate of advance, the swarm will reach Luminary Prime in 6 weeks. Zethra's light dimmed to pale gray. Your species has led this council for 11,000 years, Stone continued. In all that time, you have never faced true extinction. You have always had others to fight for you." He paused. "Those days are over. Either you accept our terms and we face the swarm together, or you reject them and face the swarm alone. Choose." As the hour ended. The vote was called. It passed unanimously. The Terran Accords were signed that same day, as witnessed by every species in the galaxy. And in that moment, everything changed. Human fleets received orders that had been prepared for weeks. Across the galaxy, ships that had been waiting in hidden positions began to move. Not dozens. Not hundreds. Thousands of warships, carriers, destroyers, and support vessels executed perfectly coordinated. Jumps that spanned the entire galactic arm. The Valkyrie first noticed the change at Tessara Station, where a forward-feeding force had gathered to consume the agricultural world below. The hive mind directed its warriors with cold confidence. The price species had no real defenses. Victory was certain. Then the stars themselves seemed to explode. A single human carrier group dropped out of hyperspace directly above the swarm fleet. 20 ships against 200. The Velkari calculated the odds, found them amusing. They stopped being amused within the first 30 seconds. The human ships moved in patterns the hive mind could not predict. They changed formation constantly, adapting to every response before the swarm could react. Their weapons found weak points that should have been impossible to locate. Their shields absorbed damage that should have been fatal. But worst of all was the terror. The Velkari did not feel fear. They were predators, born to hunt and consume. But something in the human attack triggered ancient instincts buried deep in the swarm's collective memory. These were not prey. These were something else entirely. The battle lasted for hours. When it ended, 187 Velkari warships had been destroyed. The humans lost 3 vessels. Across the galaxy, the same story repeated. Human fleets appeared where the swarm was strongest and broke them with ruthless efficiency, not through superior numbers or overwhelming force, but through intelligence, adaptation, and a fury that had been building for 300 years. The Drath Imperium received a different message. A single human stealth destroyer appeared in orbit above their capital world without warning. It had passed through every detection system, every defense network, every warning satellite without triggering a single alarm. The broadcast it sent was simple. Your expansion ends now. Withdraw your forces to pre-war boundaries within 7 days. This is not a negotiation. The Drathwar Council looked at the impossible ship hanging above their world. They thought about how it got there. They thought about what else might be hiding in the darkness between stars. They ordered a full retreat within the hour. The galaxy watched, in awe and terror, as humanity demonstrated what it had held back for 3 centuries. This was not the helpful, patient humanity they had known. This was something older and darker. This was the species that had survived ice ages and plagues and wars that killed millions. This was the species that never stopped fighting, never stopped adapting, never stopped surviving. This was humanity unleashed. And finally, the galaxy understood why the Luminari called them dangerous. They were absolutely right. 1 year after the signing of the Terran Accords, the galaxy had become something new. The Velkari swarm had been pushed back to their original territories. Their numbers reduced by 60%. They had learned a lesson that would echo through generations of their hive mind. Some prey was not worth hunting. The cost was too high. The humans were off the menu. The Drath Imperium had transformed from aggressive conquerors into reluctant partners. Human trade advisors had shown them that economic cooperation brought more wealth than conquest ever could. Their emperor, once a proud warrior, now spent most of his time negotiating shipping contracts and complaining about tariff regulations. It was boring. It was also far more profitable than war. The Tesseron fields bloomed again. Human agricultural specialists had returned to repair the damage, working alongside local farmers who now treated them as honored teachers rather than convenient servants. High Cultivator Marin had died 3 months after the human return, but she had lived long enough to see her world saved. Her last words were a thank you to Dr. Sarah Okonjo, spoken to the empty air, hoping somehow the human scientist who had saved them all might hear the Krethfer had rebuilt their refineries with human help, but this time they paid attention. Young Krethver engineers worked beside human technicians, learning skills their ancestors had forgotten. For the first time in millennia, the stone people were building new things instead of just maintaining old ones. And in the great council chamber, everything had changed. The elevated seats were gone. Where once the ancient species had looked down upon the younger ones, now every delegation sat on the same level. Human architects had redesigned the space based on a simple philosophy: those who serve together should stand together. Ambassador General Yara Stone stood at the central platform, preparing to deliver humanity's first annual address to the council. She had her father's steady eyes and her mother's grace, but the words she spoke were entirely her own. 1 year ago, she began Humanity Returned to Galactic Affairs. We came back angry. We came back wounded. And yes, we came back dangerous. She paused, looking around the chamber at the hundreds of delegates from dozens of species. But we did not come back to rule. We did not come back to punish. We came back because, in the end, that is what humanity does. She touched a control, and images appeared above the chamber. Ships delivering supplies to starving worlds. Doctors treating patients in rebuilt hospitals. Engineers constructing new stations and systems that had been devastated by the swarm. Soldiers standing guard beside alien comrades who had once called them savages. In the past year, we have accomplished great things together. The Velkari threat is contained. The Drath aggression has ended. 17 famine zones have been eliminated. 8 plagues have been cured. Trade has increased by 300%. She smiled slightly. Not bad for a species that was too young for council membership. Laughter rippled through the chamber. Even Zethra's light flickered with amusement. But I did not come here to celebrate our victories, Yara continued. I came here to acknowledge our failures. The chamber fell silent. When humanity left, billions suffered who had done us no wrong. Children died on refugee ships because we chose pride over compassion. Worlds burned because we wanted to prove a point. Her voice grew heavy. We tell ourselves that we were justified, that the council deserved to see what life was like without us. And perhaps that is true. But the innocent who died during our absence did not deserve anything except help that we refused to give. She looked directly at the Tesseron delegation. Kira sat among them, the young envoy, who had knelt before Secretary Chen and begged for humanity's return. We're not blameless, Yara said. We could have found another way. We chose not to. That choice has consequences that we must live with forever. She straightened. But we are here now, not as your warriors, not as your servants, not as your saviors. We are here as your partners. And together, we will build something better than what came before. In the observation gallery above the chamber, Marcus Stone watched his daughter speak. He had retired 6 months ago, his duty finally complete. Now he spent his days teaching young officers at the academy, passing on everything he had learned in 50 years of service. Beside him sat Counselor Zethra. The luminary had requested a meeting after the address, and Marcus had agreed, curious what the ancient being wanted to discuss. She speaks well, Zethra said quietly. She has your strength, but not your hardness. She learned from her mother, Marcus replied. I taught her how to fight. Her mother taught her why. Zethra was silent for a moment, his light shifting through colors that Marcus had learned to read over the years. Blue for contemplation, gold for respect, gray for something that might have been shame. I have served on this council for 11,000 years, Zethra finally said. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched species evolve from primitives to starfarers. I have witnessed wonders that most beings cannot imagine. He turned to face Marcus. In all that time, I have never seen a young species admit fault while standing in victory. Marcus said nothing, waiting. We told humanity that you were too dangerous for leadership, Zethra continued. We were wrong. You are exactly dangerous enough. His light brightened to warm gold. Dangerous enough to fight the battles others cannot. Dangerous enough to tell hard truths when comfortable lies would be easier. Dangerous enough to build instead of just survive. He extended a limb of pure light, the luminary gesture of deepest respect. I am honored to have lived long enough to see what your species will become. Marcus accepted the gesture with a simple nod. There was nothing more to say. In the chamber below, Yara was finishing her address. The galaxy will face new challenges in the years ahead. New threats will emerge. Old tensions will resurface. There will be times when cooperation seems impossible and isolation seems wise. But humanity has learned something important this past year. We learned that turning our backs solved nothing. We learned that our strength means nothing if we do not use it to protect those who cannot protect themselves. We learned that the galaxy is not just our home. It is our responsibility. She looked up at the stars visible through the transparent ceiling. 300 years ago, Humanity reached beyond our small world and found a galaxy full of wonders and terrors. We offered friendship. We were given contempt. But we did not give up. We did not stop helping. We could not. Because that is who we are. Her voice rose. We are the species that sees suffering and cannot ignore it. We are the species that sees problems and must fix them. We are the species that falls and rises again and again because we do not know how to stay down. She spread her arms to embrace the entire chamber. The galaxy trembled when humanity turned our backs. It was right to tremble. But we are not going anywhere. We are here. We are staying. And together, we will reach heights that neither of us could achieve alone. She paused. That is not a threat. It is a promise. The chamber erupted in applause. Delegates from species that had once dismissed humanity as dangerous animals now stood and cheered. The sound echoed off the crystal walls, a thunder of hope and gratitude, and finally, respect on Earth. Billions watched the broadcast. In homes and schools, in stations and ships, humanity saw itself reflected in the stars. They were not perfect. They were not always right, but they were trying every day to be better than they were before. The galaxy had called them too young, too volatile, too dangerous. They had been right about all of it, and that humanity had learned was exactly what the universe needed.